Alex, are we ready to get going?
Yes, we are.
All right, great. Thank you. And thank you, Brent. And I'd like to just welcome everyone to the Route Consultant Weekly webinar. For those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Butch Butler, and I'm a regional sales director here at Route Consultant. I work with both our new buyers who are looking to get into the space for the first time, as well as with existing contractors to help create liquidity events for them, as well as gain additional efficiencies from an operating perspective in their businesses. For our regular attendees, welcome back. Whether you're brand new to the industry or you've been a contractor since the RPS days, we want to make these webinars places where you can learn, have some fun, and get your questions answered. So before I get started, I'd like to read a quick disclaimer as we do every single week. Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. And all that means is that you will not hear anything material today from a non-public information perspective, but we do hope that we can help you with some insightful information nonetheless. As it relates to our procedures here today, the Q&A versus the chat button. If you want to submit a question on any of today's topics throughout the webinar, you can submit those in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, not the chat feature, since we can only manage one at a time. So feel free to start loading those questions at any point throughout the webinar, and we'll attempt to get through every single one of them. That's our goal as we do these, to get through every question that's asked. So today, from a content perspective, I am so pleased to have Alex From here. Alex is not only an excellent operator in the space, but I like to think of him as a serious expert. He speaks and presents publicly on the topic around FedEx and safety and operating these businesses. So it is a real pleasure for us to have Alex here helping us on today's webinar. And so with that, we're going to cover safety practices, but I know Alex is capable of handling almost anything around Linehaul, and we'll do our best to get all your questions answered. So with that, Alex, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Butch. I really appreciate it, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So as Butch mentioned, we're going to be talking about safety best practices. Safety is a massive topic within the FedEx universe, so we're really not going to be able to get down into the weeds about it. Just understand that safety has to be your number one priority as a FedEx contractor. There's a number of different reasons why. At the end of the day, you're operating, what I like to think about is 50 to 80 ton missiles going down the highway. Okay. So you need to instill within your company a culture of safety so that you can make sure that your driver stays safe and that the pedestrians and civilians on the roadway stay safe at all times. Two, the easiest way for you to lose your contract or to get in trouble with FedEx is to have a bad safety record. Okay. Safety is a huge priority to FedEx, and safety will get you in quicker trouble than having service issues, availability issues, or anything in general. FedEx is usually willing to work with you if you have a service issue or availability issues. FedEx is not going to work with you if you consistently fail on their safety metrics. So you need to understand that safety has to be your top priority. So let's talk about safety best practices. Safety best practices. The first thing is that you want to instill within your company a safety first culture. Okay. It should be included in your employee handbook. I have my employee handbook right here. And if you go into my index, you'll see that we have safety procedures and safety inspections and discussing accident procedures. Okay, so it has to be in your employee handbook. When you onboard your drivers, you should talk to them about safety and explain to them how you as an operator do safety. Either that comes from your BCs or from you yourself. You want to have a weekly safety message. So every week with their paycheck, we attach a safety message of what the topic is. For example, this week, it's sort of safety, but it's talking about pre-trip inspections and what they need to be looking for. And in that, we actually go in depth today, or we're going in depth this week with what you need to have in your vehicle binders. But you want to have a weekly safety message. I also require my BCs to talk about safety with each of our drivers on a weekly basis. And then I have a monthly safety call with all my employees to talk about safety topics. And then if we have a safety event, then we will, where we had a, say an accident, either preventable or non-preventable, we've had a disconnect, we have anything that occurs going on in safety, then we will do a stand down and we will actually talk about it with all our drivers and then go through remedial training as necessary. FedEx requires us all to be participating in a monthly safety program. If you have questions, what are the approved safety providers? Feel free to reach out to myself or to Butch or to route consultants, and we can put you in touch with the different safety providers that are out there. There's, at any given time, there's about 8 to 10 different safety providers that are approved by FedEx to run and operate your safety training program. Now, so what do I else I do? So if we have our vetter and we use our vetter as a teaching tool, one to capture safety violations, but we also use it to conduct remedial training. I have 2 of my managers are specifically tasked with conducting remedial training. So we identify a safety violation, we will counsel my drivers, and then we will conduct remedial training. The remedial training can consist of anything of watching additional videos, actually doing a right seat ride with one of my drivers where my manager is actually in the passenger seat, making sure that they are doing these things correctly. If it's an issue with dropping and hooking or disconnects or pull-offs, then we will actually physically practice and we will coordinate with FedEx and say, hey, can we borrow 2 trailers and a dolly? We're going to practice connecting and disconnecting. Or, hey, can you provide us with a trailer that's we want to practice backing and pulling away from a dock. So FedEx is, when you go to FedEx and say, I want to work on these safety issues, they're more than willing to work back with you and get these things identified and addressed. Finally, the last 2 things I do is I have an incentive program. So my drivers who don't have a safety violation in the previous month and who complete their safety training by a certain time, I provide them with a $200 safety bonus. Now, there is a stick with that. If they don't finish their safety training on time, they lose their safety bonus. If they have a safety violation, they lose their safety bonus. And then the last thing I do is that I don't dispatch any driver in the following month if they haven't completed their safety training on time. So by the 1st of every month, they need to make sure that they complete their safety training on time. And the reason why is that you lose some of your indemnification if you have an accident, if your drivers have not completed their safety training. So if you remember from the accident tier indemnifications that we've discussed in the past or looked in the contract, there are 3 tiers. So one, you need to have your forward collision avoidance and mitigation systems in your tractors. 2, your drivers need to be enrolled and current with their safety training program. And then I'm actually mind blanking right now, but there is a 3rd indemnification that you need to have to get all 3, so that you achieve the $2,500 FedEx indemnification level instead of the 2 other levels. Actually, I think those are all 3 of the levels, if I'm correct. And then finally, just to talk about some of the things that you can do and set up, I'm going to share my screen right now. What I provide all my drivers, and it's in every single one of my employee handbooks, is a accident procedure card. So, so if you look at I assume, Butch, can you see this, my accident procedure card?
Yes, I can, Alex.
So I actually created this with my HR manager, and we actually attach it to every single one of my vehicle binders, and then it's also given out to each of my drivers, and so they carry it on with them. So we do regular spot checks. They have to have their FedEx ID at all times with them, and they actually have to have this Alpha Kilo Logistics accident procedure card. And it's the size of a business card, and it goes through what they need to do in the event of an accident. So this is included not only here in our on this business card and in all our vehicle binders, but it's also listed in our employee handbook. And so these are the kind of things that you want to have in your safety program. Now, I understand that a lot of you will want to have or ask if you can have this card. Unfortunately, for liability purposes, I cannot give you my card, but if you want, please feel free to reach out to route consultants or to Butch or to myself, and we can more than willing to work with you and to develop not only an accident procedure card, but we can work with you to develop an accident accident procedures or a safety training program, or just a safety culture within your organization. But you got any specific questions?
Not on this, Alex. I mean, I've got some for just general, but not on that presentation.
Awesome. So that's it for safety right now. I mean, there's a lot more we can go into depth with, and we can discuss. We can talk about, how it impacts your ability to grow within the organization. We can talk about more details about what kind of coaching we do. But those are all getting down more into the weeds. And the purpose of this conversation was to have more of a high level conversation about, what is the expectation, within that FedEx is expecting you to have in your safety program, and then how do you instill a safety culture in your organization? But by and large, understand that this is the most important topic that you need to have with FedEx. FedEx is going to appreciate you as a contractor when you have those conversations with your station manager or with your senior line haul manager or with BDS that you're talking about safety. That's the way you get ahead and advance and grow your business within the FedEx universe.
Hey, Alex, I would like to start with one, if that's okay. When you bring on a new driver, and let's assume this person does have enough experience to start behind the wheel, what do their first 30 and 60 and 90 days look like? And how do you approach that with drivers with different levels of experience?
Yeah. So so if it's somebody that's coming straight out of a truck driving school, they go into our entry level driver training program. FedEx mandates and requires you to have certain things that you need to have in your entry level driver training program. It's part of Schedule E of the contract of the TSPA. But in addition to that, we have certain things that we do ourselves within our organization, to make sure that they can matriculate through our entry-level driver training program and become a proficient driver on the road. So our typical program lasts a minimum of 120 days, and typically we actually don't graduate a lot of our entry-level drivers until they've actually been driving for us for about 6 months, which is longer than the FedEx-approved 90-day program. I just find that you have to be real. Actually, I've never actually had a driver achieve the number of hours that they need to in that 90-day period. But two, I'm just not comfortable putting them behind the wheel. And a lot of my team drivers, my lead drivers, are not comfortable, just giving them pulling the training wheels off and letting them go. So there's a lot of things we do, but we'll practice over and over again, the appropriate way to hook up and break down sets. That's a real big issue. You see that one of the riskiest things that you can have on the highway is a disconnect on the road. So we go over that. And one of the things that we do in our company is that we require all our drivers to actually take pictures of their pintle hook and their safety chains to actually it's actually like a second check for themselves to prove that they actually did it right. So they go in, they hook their pintle hooks, and they hook their they go in and hook the pintle hook, and they hook their safety chains, and they set the pintle hook. And then they actually have to take a picture of both sides to show that both hooks are in the D-rings, and the pintle hook is closed. And then once you have that, then they look at the picture. Some of my managers require all their drivers to actually send the picture to them every single day to prove it. Others of my managers don't, but I give that kind of responsibility to my managers and delegate and have them make the decisions. But that's a big one. In areas where we're allowed to pull off docks, and not all FedEx terminals or stations are you allowed to pull off docks. It's on a case-by-case basis. We actually practice pulling off docks, or if we are required to back into docks, we'll practice backing into docks. But we go over the way that we do things within, so how do we do our pre-trip inspection? How do we do our post-trip inspection? How do we hook up? How do we break down sets? How do we check in? What are our requirements for, accident procedures? How do we actually talk and engage with dispatch? That's a big one. We're always, at the end of the day, we're contractors, and FedEx is actually our only customer. So I want my drivers to have a professional and respectful relationship with dispatch. And by extension, I also expect that dispatch is going to have a respectful and cordial relationship with my drivers. So we go through all those different things. So depending on how experienced they are, no driver just jumps into the seat and starts driving from day one. At a minimum, they're going to spend a couple days with one of my managers. My managers will, the first time they ever drive, even if they're a 10 or 15-year experience, my manager is in the right seat, or a lead driver is in that right seat with them, finishing off the run. And generally, usually, even for my most experienced drivers, it's a 2 to 3 day process before we'll let them go on their own.
Gotcha. And you mentioned taking pictures during pre and post trip to ensure the hookups. Do you use a technology provider for that, like Whip Around or anybody in particular?
We don't use Whip Around. We use Safety Forward. Safety
Okay.
Forward has a similar kind of ability to take pictures and upload them that Whip Around does. It's not as I've looked at Whip Around, and Whip Around is a great application that you can download. I just haven't needed it in my business. I don't generally have. My managers are really good on training up my drivers to make sure that they're doing their pre-trip and post-trip inspections. Are they doing a DOT, FMCSA certified pre-trip and post-trip inspections? Probably not, but to be honest, but are they checking all the tires, air levels? Are they checking all the lights, checking the fluid levels, looking at the belts, and listening for air leaks? Yes, they are. And so that's something that we expect that they do. So they do a check before they move from the parking lot and drive into the yard to go pick up their first trailer. They're doing that check. Once they hook up, they're doing a walk around of the trailer to make sure all the marker lights are on and that the brakes work. And then as a post-trip inspection, they're re-walking around everything to make sure everything is still good to go. For example, today, one of my drivers was at a bump and received a damaged trailer. Okay. And so he notified us immediately, and we took pictures and we notified FedEx and said, hey, we just received this trailer. It was damaged. We don't know what happened, but we are notifying you. And that actually, that's important. Okay. Because FedEx is going to be very quickly to assess or deduct money out of your settlement to pay for the damages to that trailer. So it's really important that your drivers are doing that check and making sure they do a post-trip at the bump and a pre-trip at the bump to make sure that the trailers that they're picking up and they're dropping off are not damaged.
So
Because
along those lines, what if there's something with the trailer such that you deem it not safe to operate, be it a tail light out, a bald tire, something where you meet it at a bump, or you determine somewhere through when you get the trailer that this is no longer something you should be working with in its present state?
So one of the things that we do in my company, and and I think that and a lot of other experienced contractors do, is that we won't drop our set until we are comfortable with the other set.
Okay.
So if the other set is not in roadworthy condition, they are required to notify FleetNet and get FleetNet to send somebody out there to fix the trailers. The last thing you want to do is drop your set and hook up to a new set, and then all of a sudden learn that there's damage to the set and you can't get back out of the road, and the other contractor or the other driver is 50 miles or halfway back home before you're back on the road. So our expectation is that we are going to if we identify any damages or any mechanical issues with our trailers, prior to us getting to the bump, we are going to effect a repair. You are required to notify FleetNet for all FedEx repairs to FedEx equipment. So you have to use FleetNet. You cannot use any mechanic that you want on the trailers, which can be sometimes painful when you're at a bump in the middle of nowhere. That being said, more often than not, the bumps are at a TA or at a Petro or a Flying J or a Love's, where they actually have a maintenance facility on site. And something that you're going to experience with is you can kind of jump the line if you go to the Love's or the TA and talk to their maintenance yard and say, hey, I want to get myself in line to go in. And then you call FleetNet and say, hey, I'm at this Love's. Can you go authorize the repairs on these trailers? And it has a bad tire, or it has a marker light out, or it has one that's obviously quite common is you need to replace the fuses in the hookup. so that the trailer can receive power from the power unit, so the marker lights will work.
Thank you. I want to encourage everyone at this point, please, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A feature, and we'll deal with them and answer them as effectively as we can when we get them. Alex, one of the things that I appreciate, and because I've been watching these businesses evolve over the last 5 years, is the technology changes that have occurred that really help operators from a safety perspective. And your ability to know what's going on in the cab relative to a few years back, even if an event is not triggered, you still have so much more opportunity to coach your drivers around safety just by observing their behavior, right? So, talk with us about, how many coaching sessions do your BCs generally perform on things that are not even accidents, but that they pick up on the technology as a coaching opportunity?
So I would say, when we first started Vetter, and this has to be probably, I think we've been starting Vetter about 4.5, 5 years ago. There was a lot of coaching sessions. And even now, I would probably say I average about 3 to 4 coaching sessions a week. It's gone down a lot. But it's typically stuff like my driver's at a stoplight, and they're looking at their phone is quite a common one, which we have to do some remedial training on that one. Or they're in bumper to bumper traffic, and the vetter will click off on the following distance. But in general, I cannot, knock on wood, I cannot remember the last time I had a driver observed using a cellular device while they're operating a vehicle. I cannot remember the last time I've had a driver flagged for not wearing a seatbelt. I would say the following distance one you get that one quite a bit, especially depending on the amount of traffic, and also how aggressive the civilian drivers are around you.
Right, right.
And
Yeah,
then
they
there's
can cut you off and you're within driving, for following distance without even knowing it. So yeah.
And it's important to remember that, your vehicles are all supposed to be governed at 65 miles per hour. That is a FedEx requirement. And so your vehicles realistically shouldn't ever be in the left lane. You can be in the middle lane, you can be in the right lane, but the left lane, your vehicle should never be there. There is some really great technology that's coming out right now on the new vehicles. And it's something that I've started incorporating in all mine. Like I have since 2022, all my new truck acquisitions have included something called, depending on the manufacturer, if it's Kenworth, it's called Wingman, which comes from Bendix, and it's a hockey puck that goes on the side of the truck and gives you a side visual on the passenger side to let you know if there's any vehicles in your blind spot. I'm slowly converting my fleet over to Freightliner now, and they have something called Detroit Assurance that comes with something called Blind Spotter, which is the same kind of idea. And then you also have, almost all these vehicles now. I don't think you can buy a vehicle that doesn't have. Obviously, everybody needs to have forward collision avoidance mitigation systems, and you're required to have forward collision warning and lane departure warning systems. But a lot of all my Freightliners that I bought in the last 2 years, so I bought 8, they all have something called lane keep assist, which is kind of like will keep you in your lane. I don't know if you've driven a new vehicle or some of the recently produced civilian vehicles, but they all have these. They have like a rumble seat. Like if you try to change lanes without signaling. A lot of these tractor trailers have the similar kind of technology called lane keep assist, and I find that very useful. I actually had a vehicle where unfortunately I had a driver fall asleep on the road, and the vehicle actually identified that he was falling asleep and slowly slowed the vehicle down and came to a stop. Luckily, it didn't cause an accident, but it was a pretty scary incident. And then the forward collision warning and the forward collision avoidance and mitigation systems and the lane departure warning were all like blaring, and finally he woke up. We watched the whole thing on the video. It was kind of scary and crazy all at the same time.
Well, thank God for that technology. It really is. It helps every single year. It gets a little bit better. And people behave differently when they know they're being observed, and
Yep.
it does lead to safer driving. It does. So
And then there's a couple different vendors out there that have some great software systems to assist you. So we've talked about Whip Around. Safety Forward has a similar program. So Safety Forward is a safety provider. It's an app that where the drivers will watch a video and then have to do their answer a number of different questions, and it doesn't allow the drivers to like skip ahead. So they have to have watched these 10 to 15-minute videos. But it also has additional features where you can upload vehicle documents. So all your vehicle documents can be there. So you have an electronic vehicle binder. And then you also have you have your physical vehicle binder. But the last thing it does is allows you to take pictures of the different items in the pre-trip and post-trip inspection. And so you can require that drivers can't log out of this device until they've taken those pictures. My Ground Force, which is a third-party vendor that to operate your back office systems and do a lot of these different kind of things, has a similar program. They've partnered with Safety Forward, and so actually the Safety Forward actually runs in the background, and My Ground Force, it just happens to be the API on the top, but you get all the same kind of user and functionality. I believe FX Forward has a similar kind of program, and then I believe Holiday Tech was looking into something like that. And then I wouldn't be surprised if EBO Truck doesn't have something as well. Um, and then with the with the vendor providers, you have different functionality. Like I'm a Lytx user, but I know that I know that um, some of the other camera providers, which are
Ground Cloud.
Ground Cloud and Smart Witness, have similar programs. But like one of the features that I like about Lytx is that so I can in the environment of inclement weather, I can actually find a tractor that's maybe potentially driving on I-80 in Wyoming and look at the forward facing camera of that tractor to understand what are the road conditions right now. And I can then tell my driver, hey, I need you to take a safety break. I don't want you driving on I-80. There's a snowstorm going on, and we're going to talk to FedEx and see if we can divert you to a different location. And I've used that actually a couple times this year on route in the couple of different snowstorms we've had, where I've told my drivers to pull over, don't keep driving because you're heading into a snowstorm or heading into difficult and dangerous icy road conditions. And then we've diverted the tractors after having a discussion with FedEx. So
Wow.
it's a pretty powerful tool.
Absolutely.
Then Omnitrax, I don't know about Trimble because I'm not a Trimble user, but REL has this great thing called Zonar. And I really recommend it if you decide to go the leasing route to get in with REL and learn about their Zonar system. You get a lot of information, not only just on maintenance tracking, but you can actually see performance metrics of your drivers driving your vehicle. So you can see how often they're braking, how often they're idling, how fast they're driving, how are they handling the roads, and how are they taking turns. It gives you some G-force indicators and some GPS monitoring that you can use for to try to get your drivers to drive a certain way on the roads and on the conditions out there.
Thank you. I know you work closely with not only with FedEx, but some of these technology providers as well too. And so is there anything that you see coming down the pipe in the next 12 to 18 months, either mandated by FedEx or that is or just from the market, the technology providers coming forward with solutions that we don't know about currently? Do you aware of anything that we should be expecting?
Well, I think the biggest one is going to be the side radar. I could see FedEx mandating it, kind of like they mandated the forward collision avoidance mitigation systems. The number one cause of accidents within the line haul space these days is not backing or not forward collision. It's actually side swipes. So that's the number one cause of accidents. And while they're not the most dangerous type of accidents, they're most frequent. And I could see FedEx requiring us to have what you call blind spotter or wingman fusion or that side radar or lidar systems on all the vehicles. I don't know if they're going to retroactively require us to install them, though you can coordinate with Bindex and Wabco both sell a aftermarket system that you can actually attach to your vehicles yourself. I don't know if you can do it on a day cab. I know you can do it on on a sleeper truck because of the size of the cab. It's like I said, it's a hockey puck sized thing that you attach to the side. You drill a hole through the cab, you run wires back into the ECU, and then you get an alert that depending on how it works, you either have a little LED display that comes up on your dashboard that then tells you if there's a vehicle in your blind spot, or it can actually hook through the ECU into the SAM chassis and connect into your electronic mirrors and give you a notification on your mirrors. So it's pretty powerful stuff. So that's the biggest one that I could see coming down the pipeline. I mean, obviously, as we progress, our vehicles are only going to get more and more technologically advanced. At some date, while I don't expect us ever to have these AI-driven vehicles where we have no one in the truck, I can see us getting to a point where you have more of a driver who is a manager of that vehicle instead of an actual operator, and where you have their job is to monitor all the systems within to make sure that they're operating, and at times take over the operation of that vehicle. And you could have, not necessarily like a pure Tesla driving all alone, but you're going to get to a point where we're very similar to that kind of technology.
If
And
you
that's
had to think
probably,
about yeah.
I would say that's probably about 10 years away.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask. The front end of that window, when does it open? But
Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue with it is the bandwidth of the computer power. The reason why you don't see a lot more AI push on vehicles right now is because the computing power is so great on that vehicle, and you can't have any latency. So as a vehicle drives down the road, that 0.1 or 0.2 seconds worth of latency as it communicates with the conditions on the road back to a server and then back to your truck, that 0.1 or 0.2 seconds when you're driving 65 miles down a highway, that's a good 60 to 100 feet. And that's the difference between you avoiding an accident or hitting an accident. So that's why you're always going to have a driver in there. Within 10 years, I can see us developing computer technology that's strong enough and fast enough where we can have that AI computer, that's very specific oriented AI computer in a cab that can do a lot of these functions. But until we get to that point where you can actually have that computer in the cab, you can't get to that point where we're having, a computer drive a truck instead of a human. And then with that AI, you need to have a strong enough battery, and we're not there with the battery technology. The liquid lithium batteries are too heavy. We need to switch. Realistically, the best thing that could happen to trucks, I think, and we're not going in this direction, unfortunately, is to do hydrogen. It's a very clean operating system. It provides a tremendous amount of power. You get a tremendous amount of range on hydrogen, but we all want to go to batteries, and so we're just not there. We need solid state batteries, and while we understand the technology and we can develop solid state batteries, they're too fragile, and they're too expensive.
yes.
Yeah.
Maybe someday we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of different changes in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
The next 5 years we'll see continued improvements. Continued range improvements. My fleet's averaging over 7 miles per the gallon, which is great. I'm looking forward to improvements on these engines. And we're only going to get better fuel efficiency over time. And eventually, someday we're going to break the code and we'll figure out how to do a non-combustion engine. But it's going to be a while.
Well, it's pretty impressive the strides we've made in technology from a safety perspective. I mean, really, it just back to 5 years you mentioned, the industry has really evolved with regard to how we can protect drivers, civilians, and the trucks. So that part of it has been exciting to watch unfold. While we're waiting for people to maybe ask some questions, I'm just going to spend a minute and talk about a couple of our new listings that we've had come live in the last week. And please populate the Q&A if you have any questions, and always feel free to follow up with Alex or I, either one, if you don't feel like comfortable asking on this call. But we've got a couple of new listings in South Carolina. One is along the coast. They're both P&D, and the other one is in the northern part of South Carolina. The one on the coast is 11 P&D routes. Asking prices a little over 600,000, 6.25. The margins are strong at almost 15%. Comes with a full-time manager, a nice fleet. And there is some assumable truck debt there as well, too, in terms of deal structure. With regard to the other bit listing we have in South Carolina, it's in northern South Carolina. And again, a nice strong margin at 14% with a manager to run the operation, some flexibility in the fleet. It's a tenured contractor. And again, there's some assumable truck debt there too, which when you're structuring these deals, it's always nice to have the ability to layer in some truck debt. And oftentimes that helps a deal get structured without necessarily having to involve a new lending institution. We've also got a new line haul listing in California with 4 line haul runs. Good margin, 21.5%, 4 dedicated solos, some spare trucks. Business can be run remotely, but it's a fine opportunity for somebody who wants to get hands-on and try to grow the business. And then we also have a couple more P&D listings. One came live in Southern Nevada. It's got 12 P&D, generally 12 routes. It's got a full-time manager asking 800,000. And I know that listing well. It's a very fine business. And we've also got one that came live in Western Montana. 16 runs, a nice strong margin at 17%. Also comes with a manager and some capacity from a spare perspective in the fleet. And so please reach out to anyone at our team if you're interested in any of these new listings. We'd love to help you with it.
Was that one in Montana? Is that one in Montana line haul?
No, it's a P&D.
Okay, so just the one in California is line haul.
The one in California is P&D, yes. I know you're always looking for new P&D opportunities, Alex.
New line haul opportunities.
New line haul opportunities, yes. Thank you. Okay, so one more last opportunity for anyone to ask us questions. Please populate the Q&A if you do. And if not, thank you for joining us. And Alex, thanks for your attendance today as well, too.
Why don't we do this for the guests on here? Why don't we talk about that line haul opportunity in California? And we can talk a little bit about how, me as an operator, I look at the opportunity, because 4 dedicated runs, it doesn't come across your page very often. Now, while my operations are nowhere near California, and so it would be a little bit of a bridge too far for me, to think about it as a bolt-on acquisition. For a new investor, like I got started with 4 runs in Memphis, Tennessee. And so that was the perfect starting point for me. So let's talk about it. So where is this California opportunity located?
I do not have it in front of me. I was just given the Cliff Notes. It's not my listing. I apologize, but it's a nice teaser. And you're right. A 4 to 6 runs, solo operation with 4 to 6 line haul runs is a great way to start. This business is listed at 1.35, which is a little less than 100% of revenue. So attractive from a market perspective too. And so, yeah, for anybody who's interested, please reach out and we can get you all the details on that one listing in California. And I'll send it to you, Alex. I know it's outside your range, but I'll send it to you so you can take a look at it.
I know of a couple people who might be interested, so I'll make sure to forward it.
You've helped me before, so I trust you when you tell me some people who might be interested.
Well, I have to tell you that, there is a lot of demand for line haul right now. There is a couple different, so if you're onto social technology and social media, there are a couple different groups to join if you're interested in just staying abreast of what's going on and hearing about, the trials and tribulations of being a line haul or a P&D operator. There is a more P&D focused Facebook page called it's FedEx Contractors, I think. Run by, and it's sponsored by Route Consultants. And then there is a line haul focused FedEx Contractors, sponsored by, I think, the Line Haul Summit. But there are P&D guys on the Line Haul Summit on the FedEx Contractor Line Haul page, and there are line haul guys on the Route Consultants Facebook page. So I would recommend joining both. But the one thing that you'll see over and over again right now is I think that every other day there is a post, hey, looking for, line haul runs for sale in the Southeast, or looking for line haul runs for sale in the Northwest, or looking for line haul runs for sale in Arizona. There is a lot of demand for line haul. Most of the stuff that is exchanging and trading hands at these days are unassigned runs. So the opportunity to be able to find dedicated runs is really, really attractive. There is a premium to owning a dedicated run versus an unassigned run, but it is very reasonable, and it's very necessary. The big caveat, or the big pro to owning dedicated runs, is that you have consistency of cash flows. Like, you can project out what is that run going to do on a weekly, on a monthly, and on an annual basis. And because the FedEx business is and being a line haul contractor, the business is very formulaic. You can actually really understand what is going to be your pro forma, and your pro forma is going to actually be realized within maybe a 2 to 3% variance at the end of the year. So
That's right. As long as you staff it, if you've got equipment and drivers, you're going to be able to hit the numbers that you expect to in line haul, especially if your runs are dedicated. And I did just bring another listing live in Alabama with 6 dedicated solos as well, which didn't make the cut here today, but it's a nice new live listing. So I'll send you some information on that one as well.
Alabama, that's in like my backyard, Butch. I mean, come on.
I know. I'm sorry. I'll get it to you, Alex. We didn't highlight it today until you brought it up. So there are a couple things also I want to highlight. We've got some events that are always fun for people to attend as well, too. And we're in Southern California, April 9th, which is a Tuesday. And so we're having a happy hour, Route Consultant sponsoring it. And it is in Marina Del Rey on Tuesday from 6 to 8 in Southern California. And we would love for any and all of you to be there on that one. And then, of course, we've got our expo this summer as well, too. And so that, I believe, is at the end of July. And Brent will drop some information in the chat on the expo, too. But plenty of time to book there. And I think you still get a discount if you book your rooms early for the expo. So that's our big signature event we have every year. It's in Dallas this year, but hopefully we can see some of you at our happy hour in April 9th in Los Angeles.
I won't be there in California, but I'll be there in Dallas.
All right. Well, I'll get to see you before then.
And whenever you guys decide to do a happy hour in Denver, I'll be there. Okay.
We have one, by the way. We've got one on the calendar this year. I'll send
September or October, right?
It's later this year. Yes.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Okay, good. And I thought like maybe August or September, but let me get you the date.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm a line haul guy. We're just like, big picture people, P&D gets into the woods, or into the trees, we're kind of like looking at the big forest.
I love the perspective. Thank you for joining us today, Alex. Really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. I really enjoy it, and always a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.